Good morning and welcome to Policing TV. I'm here in Hertfordshire Constabulary with DCI Detective Chief Inspector Sarah Gilbertson of the Safeguarding Command. And Sarah, thank you first of all so much for welcoming Policing TV into your office here.
Thank you.
We're going to talk about the programme that Hertfordshire Constabulary has put together on helping better to tackle the scourge of violence against women and girls and domestic abuse. We'll come into the detail of what that consists of shortly, but tell me about how this particular initiative that we'll look at in a moment or two came about.
Okay. Part of my role is about looking at what we do in Hertfordshire and what we can do better. And something that was consistently being fed back to me was that our young in service and really overwhelmed frontline were not understanding the nuances of coercive control. And coercive control is a really tricky crime because it's not as obvious, and a lot of offenders are very subtle when they commit coercive control. So if you're assaulted, there's a bruise. If you commit criminal damage, there's something broken. And in a lot of cases, even our victims don't realise when they're a victim of coercive control. So if the victim doesn't realise, how are our officers going to realise? And, you know, a lot of police training is done in a classroom. It's done with law and PowerPoints and texts in books. And I don't think that coercive control is something that can be trained in a classroom. So I started looking for another way of bringing it to life for our frontline officers. And that led me to work in partnership with a charity called Future Living and meet some of the survivors of domestic abuse who had been through their Monica programme, which is about empowering them to live a better life. Speaking with those ladies, thinking they were absolutely amazing, hearing their stories, and understanding how the police contact that they had impacted on them as a person.
So coercive control, the vast majority being men who are coercing women. I just want to pick up on the point about those police officers that you are giving more information, better citing them on domestic abuse and coercive control, because police officers joining Hertfordshire Constabulary and other forces may be in their late teens, early 20s, perhaps of limited life experience, and from a range of backgrounds, wide range of backgrounds. So particularly when they first attend a domestic abuse call or something similar, they're unsighted on what lies behind that.
Yeah, I mean, there's an awful lot of training at training school. Like I say, that is classroom based, so it teaches them about the law behind certain elements of domestic abuse. There's a big input on domestic abuse. And then when they first start working out with officers, they are given a tutor constable who is there to guide them through and take them through their first steps when they start actually attending calls. And domestic abuse is something most officers will go to at least once a shift, if not more often than that. It's
a scourge. It's a frequent call crime. And I know it places quite some demands on policing. You had this challenge. You identified with Future Living a way of addressing or seeking, impossible almost to address the whole scourge of, but rather to support those that came forward with initially allegations of coercive control, or maybe for the police officer and others to get them to understand that they were subject to coercive control. Tell us about that how that's developed just before the first course
Yeah, of
ran.
course. So with the CEO of Future Living, we looked at a way of making officers understand what it felt like to be in a coercive control relationship. And the best and most impactful way of understanding that is with a hard-hitting account from someone who's been through it themselves. So a training day was developed, and in order to get the buy-in for the funding for it, I ran a pilot, and I selected groups of officers at random with anything from 2 years service to sort of some of them on frontline 20 years service, and I selected a group of brand new student officers to go. So I ran 2 pilots to see where the most impact was, and our student officers were people who haven't been to domestic abuse before, who were unaware of what lay in front of them, if you like. But our frontline officers are people who are dealing with it daily. And the pressure on the frontline around getting to the next job, the amount of paperwork that goes with everything, perhaps in some cases we're not identifying where coercive control was present. And I'm not saying they don't do a great job, they do, it's a really hard role, but if a victim doesn't know that they're a victim of coercive control, how do we expect the officers to? So it was very much about being able to see signs that perhaps the victim hadn't seen themselves, or through what the victim wasn't saying to them, because sometimes that's as telling. And actually hearing it firsthand from a victim who's in the same room as you, who isn't traumatized when they're talking to you, because a lot of the victims they're speaking to have literally just been a victim of assault, or have just made the hardest decision of their life to leave their partner. They're in a really vulnerable place, and that's not the best time to hear from them. So the women at Future Living who are assisting us in our training have got themselves emotionally in a good place where they are ready to discuss what happened to them in order to help the officers improve.
So the pilots led to this being endorsed by the force as a fully fledged programme.
Yes.
Who is it that you are now aiming to provide this one-day course to each year? So I imagine it's Frontline. Is it Frontline?
I would love it to go out to everyone, but what I have funding for at this current time is our frontline officers who are on a team called Intervention, which are the emergency responders, our neighbourhood policing teams who support intervention officers when resourcing requires. So they are also people who go to the first report of a domestic, and our force control room call takers. They are the people who will pick up the phone to a victim and talk to them. They're, in some cases, the very first member of the constabulary that a victim will ever speak to. So it's important for those frontline, for those force control room operators to be able to understand coercive control as well.
So a mixture of police staff and police officers. And what rank? Is it typically police constable or sergeants also involved, inspectors maybe?
I have got enough funding for the police constables, the police sergeants, and some inspectors.
So, from what you've said over the past couple of minutes, you're delighted at the programme that you have, but you believe there are further opportunities to broaden it within the force, if only the funding were available.
I would love to, yeah. And we're really proud of it, and it's already showing some great results, and it's been running 8-9 weeks now.
Now, Sarah, we're going to have a chance to speak to several others during the course of the day, and will form a part of this Policing TV recording. I think, though, for the moment, thank you very much indeed for that introduction to the programme that you have put in place, that you have developed and put in place with the support of the constabulary here. We'll look at some more aspects of this programme over the coming minutes, but for the time being, DCI Sarah Gilbertson, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
So my name is Sergeant James Valle. I've been based at Borehamwood for 10 years now. I'm an intervention sergeant. I've been in intervention sergeant for 2 years. Deal with all the regular 999 calls covering Elstree, Borehamwood, Hertfordshire area. I do really enjoy being here. I most recently moved over to our community safety unit as of today, which is just to gain more experience around our neighbourhood policing team. When the lived-in experience first came about, I was asked by an officer if I'd like to attend, because they wanted to get the perspective of obviously frontline officers, and I hadn't long moved from being a PC at the time, so they wanted to see what I could give. I went to one of the first sessions of it for the pilot scheme back on the 27th of March last year, 2024. The people that were being trained on the session were new officers that were in the sort of the first few weeks of their training, so they had never ever come across any of the information that was giving out in the pilot scheme. To them it was new. I was asked only really to attend to see if I could give a perspective, good or bad, so that they could obviously enhance it and improve it to keep rolling out the training. I sat sort of at the back of the room, but again, because it was for the new officers, the victims that came in gave their perspective of everything, good and bad. It was very interesting to hear some of the things they did have to say, because I think you can get, which I've mentioned before to people, is empathy fatigue, where you've been to something so many times before, maybe the same person, and you automatically, as a human being, you might think, oh, it's that person again. Obviously, as an officer, you can't think that way. You've got to be looking at everything as a fresh, new experience, or continuing on from what's happened, and give that person 110% every single time. Obviously, because you do come across a lot of domestic related things, you can also go to a fresh new person and still have the wrong perspective on it, because you think, oh, I'm just there, I want to just fill in my risk assessment, doing all my work, and sort of get out of there and miss some of the really poignant key parts of being there. And those victims giving their opinions really showed that and highlighted it, because one of them in particular was a continuous victim who'd had lots of interaction with police, and they felt that lots had been missed and that things could have been done more to help them. They didn't really want to open up because they'd had some bad experiences as well, so that meant that next time when they gave out information, they held back a lot of it and they didn't get support that they needed. Then it moved on to another victim who said that they had a bad experience, but then they had another officer who had a really good experience, and they said it was black and white. They said that they then really brought their faith back in policing, and they could really then open up and realise they were being listened to. And I think that is really important as a response officer, because that's all you go to most of the time. Domestic violence is a massive thing for us. I can see now as well the pilot scheme has worked really well and has continued, and now officers that are even like myself got lots of experience of being brought into these training sessions, and it's been enhanced and improved along the way, and I think it will make a real difference for people.
Hi, I'm Emma Fleming. I'm the CEO of Future Living Hertford. We're a domestic abuse charity providing therapeutic support to survivors of domestic abuse in Hertfordshire.
Hi, I'm Charlotte Slaney, and I'm a detective sergeant with Hertfordshire Constabulary, working within safeguarding, and we've been working together on some of this training.
Yeah, so the training is delivered to obviously officers in Hertfordshire, and Future Living, we provide information around what domestic abuse is, what coercive control is, how that can really be demonstrated by victims, and also a lot about trauma and how actually victims, when police officers are attending a scene, they will be impacted by the trauma that they've been through, and how this might be seen by police officers, and how that might impact how they should engage with them.
And I'm there to facilitate the training from an operational point of view, so I assist with all of the sessions and sit in and answer the questions that officers might have about procedures and policies and those kind of topics.
And one of the key parts of the training is that we do have survivors of domestic abuse that are in the sessions with us, and they talk about their experiences, and they talk about what they went through before they called police out, what led them to call police, and actually what that engagement was like. And that ranges from kind of some quite negative experiences that we can learn about, but also through to what the positive experiences they had and what they were and why that made a difference to them and why that made them go forward with their prosecutions and moving forward with their cases.
And I think one of the sort of key factors that's been really impactful in relation to this type of training is obviously it's in person, isn't it? We're all in a room, and we're quite used to doing lots of police training online, especially over the last sort of 3-4 years, but we're all in the room together, and it's a really comfortable environment for people to be able to speak honestly about their experiences and how they feel about deploying to these kind of incidents. And I think that's been really different to other training that we've done before. And I think what that's really enabled is it's helped officers to reflect on the things that actually matter to victims of domestic violence, of domestic abuse. And quite often we talk about the focus being more on empathy and understanding and connecting with people as individuals, as opposed to those more quantifiable measures of charges or prosecutions, but actually really recognising that it's about people, and we can only really do that when we're in the room having conversations person to person.
Yeah, we make it's a real strength that it's a really non-judgmental space. It's an opportunity for officers to ask the questions that they might not be able to ask at a scene of victims themselves, but it's an opportunity to ask those questions and get a response to it, so that together we can work out what a positive way forward is in those situations.
Definitely.
Hi, I'm Emma Fleming, CEO of Future Living, and I'm here now with Jodie, one of our trustees and ex-participants.
So hi, Jodie. I was in an abusive relationship for 15 years. The relationship started when I was very young, at 16, and I have completed the Monica programme here. I've had all my counselling here at Future Living, and I'm now on the board.
And Jodie's one of the key parts of the training with the police, and she very honestly shares her story with them and the impact that police attending the scenes and police have had on her ability to kind of lead that relationship. Jodie, why do you think it's important to share your story?
I think unless you've actually been through domestic abuse, you're never going to truly understand what it means to live through it, to survive it, and then to move on. So for officers to hear the reasons why you stay, the reasons why it's so hard to leave, and the support that you were so desperate for, I think that's so crucial for them getting it right, and victims actually cooperating and supporting with their statements and following the whole procedure through. Without the victim on side, the case falls apart. So it's so important for them to understand what it's really like.
And how's the reception been from the training?
There's always questions. How could we have got you on side? How could we have made you get the statement? And the truth is, that only comes with time and patience. They can go 10, 11 times to the same address. They might not get anywhere, but on the 12th time, they will. There will be something that they say or do that gets through to the victim finally, and it will make them cooperate.
And I mean, it must be really hard for you to kind of talk about that on a weekly basis. How do you manage that?
For me, I think I spent so much. I was a child at 16 when I was in that relationship. I missed out on so much of my life. But now if I'm doing something that helps one person, one officer can help someone else, that part of my life, which was horrendous, has actually been for something, and it's making a difference. I know that my daughter's only very small now, but for when she gets to an adult, that if there are better things in place, if there's more understanding on domestic abuse, I'm not saying we can stop domestic abuse, but the support afterwards. So for her, really.
Well, we're so grateful that you do share your story, because it's making such a difference to the officers that are in that room. So thank you.
To the policing audience, I hope you have enjoyed listening to this video about the collaboration we have with Future Living Hertford. We're really proud of the work that we're doing here in Hertfordshire, and if you would like to hear more, then please get in touch or have a look at the Future Living Hertford website. Thank you.